So, David, this is your story about this corporate funded judicial boot camp and its impact on the federal judiciary is particularly important in light of the fact that when we look back on at least the first 2 years of the Trump administration and Republican control of the Senate and the House, there's very few accomplishments that have any durability. I mean, we do see a massive tax cut for corporations, and if Democrats handle that properly, they will be able to roll that back and use that money for programs that many of us like. But the single most durable impact of the Trump administration and this total Republican rule has been the installation of a record number of federal judges, not just on the Supreme Court. We've seen two already seated, but federal judges at the circuit and at appellate levels. We see a domination of right-wing judges, and now we know, like I guess, the machine that pumps them out.
Yeah. So I mean, the piece and the paper that I wrote about is historical in nature. This is about a program that started way back in 1976 and continued to 1999. But recent reporting has shown that there's an attempt to influence law clerks at the Heritage Foundation, puts together a training academy. There are other less reported on retreats and things of that nature that, with the clear intent of indoctrinating federal judges. There's a whole apparatus, the Federalist Society, which seeks out law students, at the very, very early stages of their career and puts them into high-profile jobs and works to get them onto the federal bench. There's a whole apparatus on the right, and what I wrote about in this piece is really one of the more embryonic versions of that, something that happened in the 70s and 80s that really had this amazingly powerful and robust effect on changing attitudes within the federal judiciary.
All right. Well, let's go through this. It starts in 1976. What is the impetus? I mean, what is it that makes? What is it about this era, I guess, that created some awareness on the right, anyways, that we should be playing some type of long game here?
So, I mean, this is the era of what is known as the Powell Memo, where Lewis Powell, who eventually became a Supreme Court justice, but at the time was just a lawyer, wrote that businesses need to sort of get into the game of politics in a more focused way, that they were losing out to the likes of Ralph Nader in terms of influencing politics. And this can be seen as part of that. There was a movement called the Law and Economics Movement, which attempted to apply economic principles to the law, to the various ways in which judges go about understanding various parts of the law, including criminal law, family law, regulation, all sorts of things. And the Law and Economics Center, which was very much funded by corporations, 105 of them, according to a contemporary account, put on this 2 to 3 week seminar for federal judges. They did it down in Plantation Island, Florida. It was a resort area. They drank a lot of wine. It was seen as something that was, a pleasurable trip in some senses, but also a very intensive, almost like a semester-long seminar in economics plugged into a 2 to 3 week period. And it was for federal judges. So judges who, wanted to understand more about economics and how they could maybe apply that within their cases, their course, their casework, their career, could get it there. And at the time, the theory that the law and economics movement sort of put forward is that there is no structure underlying the decision making that is made in the judiciary. That there are no sort of formal ways, statistical analysis to look at whether there is discrimination, whether there is proof of fraud, whatever it is. And they set about to change that. And the seminar was billed as very much a nonpartisan sort of objective look at here's some tools you can use, you judges, to make sense of the law. However, it was put together by a guy named Henry Manny, who was a conservative. There were liberal economists that gave lectures as part of the series, but they were confined to certain segments of the discussion, and conservatives were very much in the forefront when certain large subjects came up. Manny controlled the curriculum. He knew exactly what he was doing, and while he sort of presented it in an objective manner, the clear intent of this was to indoctrinate federal judges in conservative views, business-friendly views of the law. And by 1990, over 40% of all federal judges took this seminar. So this was very, very widespread. A lot of the people who were deciding these cases were taking these classes. And what this paper then wanted to look at is what effect did this have?
All right, and before we get into that, I also want to just touch on this notion that these seminars, just simply by defining the arena, by commingling the notion of economics, and economics itself as a discipline and a profession has its own ideology that is baked into it, right? Of course. But the idea of applying cost-benefit analysis and economic efficiency, it almost, I guess back when I was in school, one of the things that if you did anything in the social sciences, the first thing as you advanced through the years was the professors would tell you, you need to find the underlying assumptions of any endeavor. And once you do, everything after that follows fairly predictably. And if you sit there and train people that the law is an assessment of cost benefit analysis and economic efficiency, and those are the prominent elements that you must follow, then what follows after that becomes fairly standardized, right?
I think that's right. And when you are talking about a case where maybe it was some business that had some litigation before a court, they might not be able to win on the fact that they poisoned a certain number of people in a specific area. But they might be able to find some economists that can tell you, well, there were costs here, but the benefits of providing this service, whatever it is they provided to all these people, so surely outweigh these costs. So economics is a field upon which business can more easily fight that battle. It's more favorable terrain for them. And so, yes, if you're boiling down the law, which has certain sort of it's a little more abstract than just cost benefit into this framework, then you're going to get a certain kind of understanding of the law coming out of that.
All right, David, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask you how it was determined by this working paper that judges' decisions were impacted. How did this manifest itself? How did these changes in the way that federal judges assess the law and assess their cases, how did that trickle down to future generations of would-be both lawyers or not would be, but lawyers and would be judges that would come after them? And lastly, I'm curious as to your perspective on how this might have implicated antitrust. When we talk about things like efficiency and cost benefit analysis, this is going to have an impact on the way that antitrust is assessed and executed. And we know there was a big change right around this same time. We're going to take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. I'm talking to David Dayen. This is Ring of Fire Radio.